Hello, it's Shark. Welcome to Cobblestone Negotiations. Today, we have a bit of a controversial topic, as we'll try to understand if NATO is fair with Ukraine. Is there any NATO's responsibility in the current conflict between Russia and Ukraine? Those are not questions that should be taken lightly. However, we will try to analyze this situation from the negotiations point of view. If you're curious about this, check out this video. The war itself didn't start in February this year, in 2022. Everything escalated after protests in Kiev in February 2014, later known as Maidan Revolution. To understand the current conflict, we need to go even further into the past. After dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, many ex-Soviet countries, as a part of their defensive and peacekeeping strategy, opted to join NATO, which stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And Ukraine was one of them. And here in the picture comes the main hero of our story, NATO, which is basically an alliance of countries from Europe and North America. Very important for our story is that since 1991, NATO has expanded significantly towards Russia. And that's the main point of conflict between, let's be clear, between US and Russia. And with many European countries only finding themselves in the middle of this battle. However, back to our story. Soon after Ukraine became independent, they established formal relations with NATO in 1992. In the period of 1991 to 2010, during the presidency of three Ukrainian presidents, Kravchuk, Kuchma, and Yushchenko, there was some cooperation between these two sides. Ukraine was closest to joining NATO in 2008, during the presidency of already mentioned Viktor Yushchenko, who was a clear supporter of this idea. Moreover, US always backed this membership while EU had its doubts, due to the very negative Russian stance. Afterwards, in 2010, pro-Russian president Viktor Yanukovych was elected, whose priority wasn't anymore for Ukraine to join North Atlantic Treaty Organization. During his mandate happened already mentioned Maidan Revolution, where pro-EU protesters clashed with the police, which led to many victims. Between 70 and 100 people died. The result was that Yanukovych fled to Russia and the government was overthrown, which led to even wider division within the country. From Russia, President Yanukovych requested that Russia sends military troops to Ukraine to establish law and order. As a result of this, on March of 18th, so only a few days after, Russia annexed Crimea. Now, it is a completely different issue whether Yanukovych had a legitimacy to make that request in that moment. In the same time, the unrests started in the eastern part of the country, in the Donbas region, between the dominantly pro-Russian population and the Ukrainian authorities. After this 4-year episode with Yanukovych, Ukraine continued their journey of joining NATO, under both next presidents, Petro Poroshenko and the current one, Volodymyr Zelensky. Although the majority of Ukraine wanted that membership and they had a huge support from US, it seems that EU didn't want an open confrontation with Russia. In March of 2016, the president of the European Commission at the time, Jean-Claude Juncker, stated that it would take Ukraine at least 20 to 25 years to join EU and NATO. Not very encouraging words for Ukrainian people. However, in 2019, the Ukrainian parliament voted with a clear majority to change their constitution in order to help country to join these two organizations. To better understand the sentiment within NATO regarding this issue, the statement from June 2021 from NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg can shed some light. He stated that Russia will not be able to veto Ukraine's accession to NATO, as each country should decide their path on their own, and the world will not return to the era of spheres of interest when larger countries decided what smaller ones should do. He stated that this question regards only Ukraine and NATO members, so Russia doesn't have any say in it. So this time, very encouraging words to the country aspiring to join them. The question still remains. Were they ever ready to back this statement with clear action in the field? Obviously, Russia didn't like this idea, and in December last year, as well as in January this year in 2022, Russia requested guarantees from NATO that Ukraine won't join them, and they were refused on both occasions. Therefore, to prevent it from happening as well as to take into protection pro-Russian population in the Donbas region, as they stated, Russia invaded Ukraine on the 24th of February this year. 3 days before that, they even formally recognized two self-proclaimed states in the Donbas region, Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics. Now, we will not dive deeper into the war itself, as that's not the focus of our story. However, after the war has started, Ukraine asked help from NATO on several occasions. And although they did help them by sending weapons, money, and many other things, the most important help didn't come. Ukraine asked NATO to impose a no-fly zone above them, which would basically mean that NATO would control their sky. So, if Russian planes fly over, NATO would be responsible to react. We didn't wait for too long for a response. They refused it immediately, explaining that if they got involved, it would lead to the World War III. And this is a wise decision with which I agree completely. The only thing that bothers me is the way how this decision was presented. By saying this, NATO violated our 12th negotiation principle. Do not transform yourself into a paper tiger. And for more about our negotiation principles, please check the description of this video. Anyway, with this response, NATO, in my opinion, transformed itself into a paper tiger. And they basically said to Russians, do whatever you like, we will not get involved. That's your turf. What I would like to know is, does the Ukrainian people feel betrayed by this decision? Or they can somehow justify it with the greater good of not involving the whole Europe in this war? I would really like to see your thoughts in the comments below. But what could NATO do differently? You'll probably ask. I must say that the moment Ukraine asked them to impose a no-fly zone, NATO already was in an almost impossible situation. If they refuse, which they did, they lose a bit of credibility, which I think happened here. But if they accept, there was a huge risk of escalating a conflict to the World War III. So, what could they do? Probably the easiest solution was if they accepted Ukraine as a member 25 to 30 years ago when Russia was much weaker. But what could they do now? Firstly, they should have prevented Ukraine from asking them that question, at least from asking them publicly that question. Probably NATO didn't want the world to know that they are a paper tiger, at least in this situation. And secondly, they could use our 15th negotiation principle, which states, disagree with your counterparty without being disagreeable, which is, they could at least keep some uncertainty regarding their possible response to Russian attacks. Instead, they gave a green light to Russia to do whatever they find appropriate. Moreover, if they didn't plan to help them fully, maybe they shouldn't have encouraged Ukraine to push that strongly for NATO membership and sour their relations with Russia to the point where we are now. What do you think about that? Please let me know in the comments below. Anyway, these war subjects are never easy to analyze, as we are talking about real lives that are at stake. However, our goal is to learn something from this and, if possible, to prevent future conflicts. Therefore, if you find this video helpful, please give a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.